our prior issues, you can see that we have started this in last May 2025. And so yeah, these are the topics, and you can access all these Insights Corner via this file also, the past issues. Apart from that, uh, you can download it from our website on the Insights Corner page, basically. So moving ahead, I hand over it to Kriti, who will start the conversation from the executive summary, what our learnings are, and so over to you, Kriti.
So thank you so much, Himanshu, for the introduction. I think without any further ado, we should start with our presentation. Let me first start with the executive summary slide. So basically, this slide gives you an overview of our whole deck, like the key areas, what we have covered, and how we have approached the topic. It will give you a gist of what is actually happening or ongoing into the cell therapy market, and the main message that you can draw from our presentation. So basically, this is the first part of our cell and gene therapy. Like, what is the single biggest takeaway that you can draw out from this deck? Then I would definitely say that cell therapy is moving from a niche and early stage part or area to a more important and established part of the biopharm industry. This is so because it is gaining momentum because of the improving clinical progress, growing technology, and with continuous regulatory support across the pharma and biotech industry. At the same time, if you look at the slide, then you will realize that CAR-T remains the leading modalities in this field. But if you look at the overall landscape, then you will see that there is an increase in interest in other approaches as well, like in CAR-NK, TCRT, then allogenic or off-the-shelf platforms. Now, if you go on a ct.gov and search about the cell therapy, then you will see that there are more than 5,000 trials that are registered on ct.gov since 2017 to till 2025. This clearly indicate that cell therapy is becoming a market where companies are investing heavily, and that you could see in 2026 as well, because because there are many new trials that are going to initiate in 2026. There are many pipelines, many regulatory updates that are going to shape and create value in this space. So at the same time, if you ask me about the challenges, biggest challenge in this space, then I will say that the biggest challenge is the execution, especially in trial execution, the manufacturing complexity and reimbursement pressure. So the companies that combines the strong science with strong execution, partnership, then deals, clear strategy, they will definitely stay ahead in this race. So now coming to our first section of this presentation. So this is the first section of our presentation where we will discuss about the opportunities, like why cell therapy is trending and the market snapshot. Next slide. So basically, this slide explains why cell therapy is trending so strongly today. In simple word, we can say that this space is gaining momentum because it is no longer seen as an experimental area, rather than it is now emerging as a more meaningful and investable part of the broader biopharm landscape. Earlier, the main question was whether the science would work or not. But now the conversation is shifting towards where the biggest commercial opportunities are, how quickly companies can scale up their product, and how much accessible they can make their product to the customers, and which players are best positioned to lead. So there are few reasons why cell therapy is trending. One of the major reason why cell therapy is trending because of its repair and curative nature towards the disease, which have very limited treatment options, such as the vision loss and multiple sclerosis. At the same time, oncology remains the biggest growth driver in hematological malignancy, as well as you will see a increased push towards the solid tumor. Along with this, there is a sharp rise in the clinical trials, and this shows that there is a sustained investment in this field. Now, another point that is coming that you can see in this slide is that improvement in manufacturing and scalability. Are the space which are making it more commercially realistic, while there are big pharma companies that are, going into a partnership or dealing, which are further adding the validation towards this market. So all these points together, emphasizing that the cell therapy is not now no longer being watched only for its science, but now it is more towards the more it is now seeing more towards because of its commercial potential and long-term strategic investment. So now moving to our next slide. Okay, so basically, this slide gives you a snapshot of the cell therapy market and shows why the space is growing so fast. So the first point is the market size. You can see that the market was around $7.3 billion in 2025, and now it is expected to grow very strongly to about $79.4 billion by 2035, which clearly indicates the growth, long-term growth potential in this market. So now if you look at the therapy area, you can see that oncology is the biggest segment and account for the largest share of the market. There are few other areas that are also included in this space, which includes the musculoskeletal, cardiovascular, then dermatology, and there are several small therapy areas as well, which is indicating that the use of cell therapy is gradually expanding beyond oncology as well. Now, if you see from a geographic point of view, then you will see that North America currently leads the market with the largest revenue share, whereas Europe and Asia Pacific also holds a meaningful share. And if you talk about the Middle East and Africa in particularly, this area is becoming an emerging area because of the rising research activity and investment. So the main driver behind this growth are the clinical activity rising and growing disease burden, growing chronic disease burden, and the regulatory support, and there is a increased demand for advanced treatment option as well. So coming to our next segment, now I would like to hand over the next section to Swati. She will discuss about the science and evolution, which will include about the cell therapy timeline, the modalities, CAR-T evolution, etc. So over to you, Swati.
Thank you so much, Kriti. So this section, the evaluation, the modalities, and how the cell therapies have evolved through this timeline. We'll be talking about this majorly. So the first one, I would like to talk about only the key emerging technologies that have come into the market, that are the most trending ones in the market right now, where a lot of clinical trials are happening. So the first one I would like to talk about CAR-T cell therapy, which Kriti has already mentioned that it has been the most dominant player in the market when we talk about the cell therapies, with almost 7 CAR-Ts in the market right now. So what is CAR-T cell therapy? CAR-T cell therapy is a type of adoptive immunotherapy where T cells are genetically re-engineered to express CAR so that they can identify the antigens and destroy the cancer cells. Even in this, where they express the CAR receptors, there are majorly 2 types. Autologous, where we extract T cells from the patient, we re-engineer them and put them back into the same patient. And another different type is allogenic. Allogenic is nothing but it is readily available and is made from donor cells. There are no allogenic CAR-Ts in the market right now. It is still an exploratory field, and we have to look forward to the future, what unwinds for this allogenic CAR-T especially. So the very next type of emerging technology we are talking about is mRNA-based cell therapy, where mRNA are introduced into the cells to express specific therapeutic protein without altering the genomic structure, providing an alternative to viral gene therapy. So they are more like CAR-Ts, but they have a different approach to identify and destroy the cancer cells. The next cell therapy is the CAR-NK cell therapy, where instead of T cells like CAR-Ts, we will be modulating the natural killer cells to express the CAR antigens and destroy the cancer cells. The next one is the TCR T cell therapy. Here, T cells are re-engineered with high affinity T cell receptors to recognize the tumor antigens for the anti-tumor activity. The next one is the TIL therapy, which is a tumor infiltrating lymphocyte therapy. It is majorly for solid tumors where the T cells are isolated from patient's tumor. They are extracted, expanded in the laboratory and reinfused into the patient right before lymphodepleting it with a chemotherapy and with an interleukin support to better attack the cancer cells. The last one, but not the least, is the in vivo CAR-T generation. It is very much in early stages, preclinical studies, early clinical studies right now. But like CAR-T therapy, autologous CAR-T therapy, what we do is ex vivo. We extract the T cells from the patients, we re-engineer them outside the patient's body and put them back. So in vivo, we are trying to do it safely within the patient's body. So this is about the emerging technologies. Moving forward to the next slide. So here we wanted to give a little bit of science background about how evolution of CAR-Ts happened. So there are almost 5 generations right now being explored. All the CAR-Ts currently in the market belong to the 2nd generation. 4th generation armored CAR-T cells and the 5th generation may be a probable solution for the solid tumors. Moving over to the next slide. So here we wanted to show a glimpse of how the cell therapy has evolved over the time. So although we say that today we have TCR, T cell, TIL lymphocyte therapy available in the market, CAR-Ts available in the market, all these had the proof of concept developed way before. We can see that in late 1980s already there were research going on for adoptive therapies, immunotherapies, which is nothing but the TIL therapies for melanoma. The first footprint for first generation CAR-Ts was evolved in murine models in 1993 itself. The 2nd generation exploratory studies began in 1998, and further moving it to overcome the flaws of it, the 2nd generation CAR-Ts, the addition of additional co-stimulatory domain by adding 4-1BB was done in 2004. Apart from TIL therapy and the CAR-Ts, the TCR T cell development started around 2006, and the first clinical trial for CD19 targeted CAR-Ts was done in 2010, which ultimately got approved with major clinical success in 2017, and we had Kymriah from Novartis in the market, which actually changed the whole scenario of the CAR-Ts in the market. And then in 2020s, we can see that CAR-Ts had their expansion in indications from heme malignancy to autoimmune disease. Currently, many CAR-Ts are being explored for autoimmune diseases, especially the systemic lupus erythematosus, lupus nephritis, and systemic sclerosis. And moving forward, there have been multiple major milestones in cell therapy. And here we can see in 2024, we had our first TCR T cell therapy approved for solid tumor, that is synovial sarcoma, in the market. And we also had first TIL therapy for melanoma approved in the market. And there are multiple clinical trials ongoing for different targets apart from CD19 and BCMA. Especially here we have highlighted the CD33, CD123, and CLL1, which shows encouraging remission rates. And then moving over to the next slide. Next, we will be talking about the pipeline, and we wanted to show you a glimpse of what are the current approved products in the market. So before the first CAR-T approval in 2017, the Kymriah and the Yescarta from Kite Pharma, we had multiple cell therapy products, which were hematopoietic stem cells transplants, they were immunomodulatory cell therapy derived from tissue products, addressing different medical needs. After the first approval of the CAR-Ts, there were multiple shift with US and EU approvals for the CAR-T. And here we can see that most of the cell therapies we have in the market are intravenous route of administration. And in the past 3 to 4 years, we also have TCR and TIL therapies in the market. So these are all about the current marketed products in the market, which are cell therapies. Moving over to the next slide. So this is an overview of the clinical trials ongoing of the past 5 years. So we took an average studies which are industrial based and interventional studies. So we can see the trend, a rising trend from in the past 5 years. In 2021, we almost had 800 studies, but in 2025, it almost rose to 1150 studies. So there is an increased trend, and if you look at the trial status, most of them are active trials. And when we talk about geography, the US is the major markets with almost 2,500 trials going on for cell therapies, followed on by major EU5 markets, followed by the Asian countries. And even by number of trials, we have multiple trials in early stage only, phase 1 and 2, and comparatively lesser number of trials ongoing in the phase 3. And then moving over to the next section. So cell therapies were vast. So we tried to give a glimpse of the major trending technology in the market, which are the CAR-Ts. So as I said earlier, there are almost 7 approved CAR-Ts in the market. And all these CAR-Ts are either targeting the CD19 or the BCMA target. And all of them have been approved only in heme malignancies, which is ALL or lymphomas and leukemias and multiple myelomas. So the current market is only for heme malignancy, and there is much more to come for immunology diseases and solid tumors. In phase 3, we have 5 molecules, and here we can see a shift where because we have 3 molecules in phase 3 for autoimmune diseases, that is myasthenia gravis and systemic sclerosis. And all 3 of them are targeted again on CD19 and BCMA. But for heme malignancies, we can see a different MOA in phase 3. Arlocell, it is targeting GPRC5D for multiple myeloma, and Rondacell, it is a bispecific targeting cell therapy. It is targeting both CD19 and CD20 to have a synergistic effect and more durable responses. And in phase 2, we can see 2 molecules which are allogenic therapy. There have been no allogenic CAR-T still in the market, and this can be a wave in upcoming wave in the market, because they will remove the major barrier where T cells have to be extracted for the patient and reinfused. So it will be readily available off-the-shelf treatment, the Semacell and the WA-CART-007, both targeting CD19 or CD7, and both are for heme malignancies. Moving over to our next slide. So in the previous slides, we tried to show the late stage assets, and these are the assets currently in phase 1/2 for all the indications. So we have based on the indications we could identify currently in phase 1/2. The new trend which we are seeing in phase 1/2 is the solid tumor indications. So all the late stages that we had were for autoimmune diseases or the heme malignancies. But here we can see new targets, new assets for solid tumors, which with novel targets like MSLN, HLA-G, Claudin 1802, and CDH17, PSMA, and CEA. So this will be a new wave that we can be seeing in the upcoming years. And then moving over to the next slide, I would hand this over to Kriti to explain about the upcoming milestone and catalyst.
So thank you so much, Swati. So now talking about this slide and the next slide. So these two slides will broadly give you a view like what all milestone we can expect in cell therapy in 2026. So the main takeaway that can be take out from these two slides is that 2026 could be a very active year for this field with several companies are expected to report their read out data and receive approval regulatory milestones and move closer toward the filing and approval. Now, what stand out is the breadth of the activity because if you look at the slide, then you will get to know that we are not looking at just one company or one type of event. For example, Capricorn has a PDUFA date in 2026 for Dermiocell in DMD cardiomyopathy, whereas Vertex is expected to begin a global regulatory submission for Casgevy in younger population for sickle cell disease and thalassemia. So these are important because they represent the potential late-stage regulatory catalyst, and not only in oncology but in other therapy area as well, like in hematology, not in hematological malignancy but in heme. So at the same time, we are also seeing some important clinical updates from early stage pipeline as well. For example, CRISPR Therapeutics is expected to report updates from autoimmune and immunology, immuno-onco studies, and whereas Adicet has multiple planned update across the autoimmune indication. So now this shows that the pipeline activity is continuing both across the early stage and mid stage program as well. So now moving towards the next slide. Okay, so now this is the continuation of the previous slide where we have discussed about the milestone. So now if you see at from the market perspective view, the most important milestone to watch will be the PDUFA dates, the registrational data, and the BLA related updates, because these events could strongly influence the value, the sentiments, and the future partnering activity. For example, Allogen is expected to report updates from both oncology and autoimmune related program, whereas Arcelix has a PDUFA target action date for NTU cell, and Kyverna has several milestone planned across the indication like in stiff person syndrome, generalized myasthenia gravis, and multiple sclerosis and other autoimmune indications. So this is a strong sign that cell therapy is expanding beyond oncology and building a space in autoimmune disease and other therapy area as well. So overall, we can see that 2026 may be an important year, not only because of the number of milestones, but also because of the variety of companies, disease, and development stage that are involved. So now moving on to our next section.
So Kriti, I'll just ask you to take a pause here, and then before we move on to the next section, I also want to add something that as Kriti was saying that CAR-Ts are moving beyond oncology. So a very clear-cut example, I recently was at a GCOM, which is an immunology conference, covering myositis. The only thing or the most talked about thing was a couple of molecules. And if I talk about those molecules, you will be amazed. One was Zolacel from BMS, another BMS molecule, Cabaletta. Cabaletta Bio was also in a discussion. They were in discussion because of their recent reset myositis study, which they are planning to go for. Which they have already started a registration study actually, which is a phase 2B study, right? And they are hoping to get launched or at least get approval in 2027. So and then we had Novartis Repacel, which is also CAR-T technology for only dedicated to only immunology. So I kind of agree with so far what our analysis is that CAR-T is not just going to be limited to only oncology. It is going beyond oncology. Another such example, which you can see, DMD cardiomyopathy, cardiovascular and DMD kind of indication, which touches upon into again outside the immuno and oncology space. So, having said that, I'll move on to the other slide so that Kriti can take over and explain.
Okay, so this is the segment where we will discuss about the barriers and the regulatory shift. So now moving to the next slide. Here, first, we will talk about the designation. So this slide shows that cell therapy receive continuously support from the regulatory bodies like from the US and the EU in 2025. Especially from the US, because most of the designation came from the US FDA, which suggests that companies are using regulatory designation like fast track and RMED to gain these benefits and speed up the development and review process in area where high unmet need indications are available, like in vision loss and in other therapy areas like neurology, etc. So another important point is that many of these therapies are still on hematological malignancy, such as the lymphoma and leukemia. But at the same time, you can also see at the slide that cell therapy is expanding beyond oncology, means in areas such as neurology, rare disease, and other treatment area. So now if you look at the number, then you can clearly see that fast track is the most common designation, followed by the orphan drug designation with 9 and RMED with 6. Now, if you look at the company-wise spread, then you will see that that this shows that this activity is happening across many players. Like Allogene and Myovia Therapeutics are the top companies who have received the highest number of designation in 2025 with 3 each. That suggests that interest in cell therapy is broad. It is not limited to any few companies, but it is expanding, and it is it is expanding in many companies, and many new companies are investing in market just to get hands-on in cell therapy and just to expand their market in cell therapy. So now I would like to hand over the next slide to Swati. So Swati.
Thank you so much, Kriti. So last we were talking about the designation, and next we would take another part in regulatory, which is what's new in the CGT regulation. Here we have tried to understand data from US FDA and the EMA in the past 2 years, like how the regulations have been supporting to regulate the CGTs, approvals, and discussions for documentation. So if we talk about US FDA in the last few circulars that we have released have clearly defined the guidelines to streamline the CMC framework required for clinical development and the other commercial specifications required to help companies better prepare for BLA submission and approval. They have also released guidances to help developers fast track the regulatory programs in these cell therapies. And also beyond approval, they have released circulars or documentations to explain methods to collect the safety and efficacy data as a part of real world evidences to further support the expansion of clinical indications. And they have also released recommendations for innovative trial designs for CGT, especially in small and rare populations where the N or the population size is very small, and where we can efficiently collect the data and how we can take the help of surrogate endpoints to better define the outcomes. And when while talking about the ICH harmonization, they have established key guiding principles for the ATMPs, focusing on priority areas that better need harmonizations and they have been continuously releasing new updates and guidelines in these areas. They have proposed new annexures to address unique development and regulatory challenges faced with this advanced therapies and specialty pharmacies. While talking about the EMA has also introduced a multidisciplinary guideline outlining the manufacturing quality control and the clinical requirements for investigational cell therapies currently in pipeline, and explaining what data and structure are needed and how they can help companies to better prepare for the MAA submission. And all EMA has last year also revised its GMP framework, proposing updates to the GMP guidelines, aiming to align with the current annexure and while maintaining flexibility in ATMP production. So this is all about the what's new in the guidelines with reference to CGT. Moving over to our next topic. So we were discussing how fast forward it was moving in terms of regulatory. Now let's discuss what are the key barriers which slow down cell therapies. Although this cell therapy clinical trials have been moving increased in numbers, they have been multiple futility trials. So why that is happening? Why and that is slowing down? That is slowing down the development. So the first point which we would like to talk about is the biological and the immunological barriers. Why? Because cell therapies often fail because patient's body environment, patient's biology varies from every patient, and they suppress or block therapeutic cells, reducing the ability to expand and function in vivo. So this host-related factors such as immune regulation, their exposure to prior therapies, and variable patient biology is contributing to reduced efficacy or relapse. The second point is about target antigen instability and disease heterogeneity. Many clinical trials fail because of this heterogeneous antigen expression, making the cell therapies, making it difficult for the cell therapies to identify targets specific to disease cells without affecting the healthy tissue. The third point is limited in vivo persistence. Even when the cell therapy products have been well developed, successfully infused, they are not able to reach to the right tissues in sufficient numbers. They fail to persist. So inadequate product fitness, which may be due to poor quality cells at the start or cells not being in ideal states, are leading to rapid T cell exhaustion and loss of this anti-tumor or anti-disease activity. The fourth, but not the least, the safety and manufacturing issues. Cell therapy, they are biologic in origin. They are coming from living organisms. So even if with very much precision, the manufacturing safety protocols are being handled, there is some even a slightest inconsistent manufacturing or inability to meet evolving regulatory standards will hamper the batch or the product size as a whole and halting the progress of this clinical trials. So these are the key barriers. Moving over to our next section. So we talked about the barriers in clinical trials. Now let's talk about why there is success with heme malignancies, more success in heme malignancies when compared to solid tumors. So the first point we would like to discuss about is antigen heterogeneity. Solid tumors are heterogeneous in nature when compared to heme malignancies. CAR T cells in heme malignancies commonly cause the cytokine release syndrome and the neurotoxicity. In heme malignancies, CAR Ts have shown strong expansion and long-term persistence, but with solid tumors is limited. It is limited due to the microenvironment and driven dysfunction. Then moving over to our next analysis. Cell therapies in itself has the greatest strength that it has treated which were once very hard to treat cancers, where other options were lacking. and this has met several unmet needs in the medical field. And also, cell therapies pipelines are expanding beyond hematology, where many other treatments are being explored in autoimmune diseases and the immunology. Also, cell therapies have a single treatment cure potential, where once curable diseases are now being cured. And also it is in personalized medicine because in T cell CAR Ts we have seen where patients' own T cells are extracted, re-engineered, and reinfused back into the patient with very low, thus causing very low risk of rejection. But coming to the weakness, the high cost, the complex manufacturing and supply chain management, and the side effects due to its neurotoxicity and the cytokine release syndrome is itself a bigger challenge to address. When we talk about the opportunity, it is expanding beyond heme. It is there are many pipeline cell therapies which are treating very hard to treat infiltrable solid tumors. And also AI-driven personalized revolution has actually accelerated therapy development, which is enhancing safety and precision and thus reducing time required for clinical trials for cell therapy. Also, allogenic off-the-shelf revolution has started where many allogenic cell therapies directly available from donor cells are being explored, this can actually lower cost and speed up the patient treatment. Well, apart from the strengths and weaknesses, it also has threats because of the uncertainty in reimbursement scenarios owing to different cost involved with different patients, and also being the cost always on the higher side. So due to its maybe due to its high cost, high management, and time consuming thing due to leukapheresis and then re-engineering outside the body and coming from the lab again, so doctors are sometimes skeptical about adopting these high efficient cell therapies when they have other easily deliverable modalities available in the market. So this was all about SWOT analysis. Next, we shall discuss about value and commercialization for these cell therapies. Coming to market pricing and reimbursement. As discussed previously, due to the high complexity in manufacturing and the living nature of the therapy, since it is coming from living organisms and T cells have to be prepared, re-engineered under stringent lab conditions and requirements. These all actually contribute to high cost of these therapies. Let's talk about market access, particular in the US. So US access is shaped by multi-payer system where Medicare, Medicaid, and commercial insurers all are involved in covering these cell therapies, and they have their own different coverages and payment pathways. When talked specifically about CAR Ts, the base price where in the inpatient settings for reimbursement is around $315,000 in 2026, and although $315K is covered, there were few research findings done in previous years which showed that the median cost overall exceeded $600,000, which is almost double. And even among them, 8.5% of patients had their cost of therapies expenses exceeding around 1 million. So these high expenses are due to hospitalization, their adverse event management due to owing to this therapies. So overall, although there is a reimbursement in place, the out-of-pocket expenses was always high. If I want to discuss about the implemented models currently in the US, there's an innovative model where known as outcome-based agreement, value-based or the value-based contracts. In this model specifically, payers and providers have an agreement on what specific clinical outcomes should be achieved for a patient, to be called that the therapy is successful for that patient pool. So payers only pay if the outcomes are achieved. So in this way, the risk is actually distributed between payers and providers, and the cost is only reimbursed to the provider only when that therapeutic outcome is achieved. So altogether, we can say that US has its own innovative payment models for CGTs to manage the high upfront cost. So, and based on this OBA models, they share the financial risk in order to preserve the patient access. Moving on to the next slide. Talking about key access barriers. So just now we discussed about how complex the manufacturing is to bring these therapeutic high cost therapies to the patients. So this high cost always leads to inadequate reimbursement, and due to its high cost, there's always payment delays and cash flow issues. Since there is multiple negotiations going on between the provider and the payer to come to an agreement about on the clinical outcome for the patient, there is always complex negotiation which further delays the coverage, and also there is insufficient data on long-term real-world data to justify these high upfront costs. Like, how long does this actually work? So all these factors have created barriers in patient access in the US. So moving over to next slide. Values, outcomes, and real-world evidences in CAR-T. So we have tried to summarize all the literatures that are available online. Basically, the real-world effectiveness or the data available online, plus the cost effectiveness models, and based on those systemic literature review, we have come across few key findings which are summarized here. So the first one is the cost effectiveness of CAR-Ts. It is primarily driven by quality adjusted life years and the incremental cost per quali gained, and country specific own willingness to pay thresholds, and it is not influenced by the product type or the indication or the geography. So the economic levels are the ones driving the cost factors here. The second one, the high upfront cost is dominated by drug price. Like, if the overall therapy is costing around $600K, then we can say that almost 75% is being contributed by the total cost of the therapy, while the other cost is because of the hospitalization, because the entire treatment should be done in a hospital setting, and the adverse event management, because we have known that CAR-Ts have a higher CRS issues as well as ICANS. So although these are small, but they are still meaningful contributors to the overall cost effectiveness. And also the real world effectiveness meta-analysis have shown that CD19 CAR-Ts have robust efficacy and manageable safety profile beyond what was shown in the clinical trials. There was one study which compared Axicell with Tisacell. So there it was found that Axicell has demonstrated superior efficacy when compared to Tisacell, which is the Yescarta versus Kymriah. But Axicell, although it had higher efficacy, came off with safety issues. So higher the efficacy, more was the safety compromised here. And one more point which we felt important to discuss was the ICER, incremental cost effectiveness ratio. Incremental cost effectiveness ratio, which is the cost for extra unit of quali gained in adults, ranged around $900K to more than $4 million in adults. So this wide variability, I mean 9,000K to 4 million was higher, reflects sensitivity to assumptions, patient populations, and the cancer types. So there is definitely need for a more refined economic models in CAR-Ts. This was all about values and outcomes.
So now we'll be talking about funding dashboards. So funding is another. So far, we have covered approvals, regulatory hurdles, guidelines, landscapes, and everything. Now, in the upcoming slides, we are going to talk about what's in there for you and why you should explore this if you're an investment bank or a big pharma, why you should explore cell therapy as a potential. What are the market signals talking about, basically? So, without further going into the detail, we're talking about I'll talk about the details basically. So, total, if you see the total number of in 2025, total number of companies who have raised the fund are 87 companies who are basically cell and gene companies, and total amount which was raised was $5.2 billion. This is a huge number. And if you see specifically, if we drill down or go into the deeper of this analysis, we will see multiple things. So first important point is that a lot of investment has happened in the phase 1 and phase 2 spaces, which is like the early on phases basically, and followed by preclinical and IND phases. RA Capital has shown a lot of trust in the cell therapy space basically, and they have been the most active investors, one of the most active investors basically. They have invested in the early rounds of Azalea Therapeutics, which was seed and series A basically. And then they have also invested in some of the late stage rounds as well for multiple companies such as BE Biopharma, Vor Biopharma, and Gemto. Right. Apart from that, now if you see the spread in terms of round wise, obviously Pipe has gotten one of the biggest investments, and Pipe as a stage has gotten one of the biggest investments, whereas now followed by common stocks. So common stocks is something which I usually do not count because these companies have done their IPOs and everything. So I'll not talk about common stocks, but Pipe is the biggest for me. I see Series C and private rounds and unspecified series have gained a lot of traction basically across this. The biggest player or someone who has generated a lot of the most amount of funding or the highest amount of funding was Cogent Biosciences, with $780 million. Right, and then this is and then the reason for this is because they've already proven their worth in their early phases. So Cogent has done late stage financing basically. So they are presently phase 3 molecule basically. So this shows that that's also the reason why the highest round or the biggest round has been done by Cogent, where this included debt loan, common convertible loans in 2025. And also the reason why company went across and then did the biggest round. The reason is because they are phase 3, so they are planning to go for their commercialization. And for commercialization, initially you need a lot of capital to get approvals, to establish a sales force, education materials. Marketing materials and everything. So hence the biggest round has been raised by Cogent. Now moving forward from funding, let's move to the deals part. Now, if we move to the deals, again, the same story, is being replicated here. 204 total deals have been done across stages. Obviously, the highest number of deals in terms of deal type breakdown, if we talk about, is done is contract services. I'll talk about contract services also, which is 105. But followed by that, there are development and commercialization and licensing deals basically. So there have been 28 licensing deals and similarly university and foundation deals, which are again pretty much these are also some sort of licensing deals basically, where companies license university research products basically, right? So those also are the same. The very good number, which is a very clear indicator of the progress being done in this space, is acquisition. 16 acquisition across the year. That means 1.5 acquisition every month on an average is happening, and this is specifically a clear indicator that that a lot of companies uh, are exploring cell and gene therapy. Specifically, if we talk right now, we're talking about cell therapy. Now, in terms of phases, early phases have gone a lot of traction, which is very clearly visible here in the development stage, where we can see phase 1 has gotten the biggest amount in terms of value. Yeah. So, in terms of total deal value, they have generated 11.1 billion dollars in terms of total deal value. I feel that the amount is going to be higher because this amount does not include undisclosed deals. So there were 204 deals. So out of 204, there would be many which will be undisclosed deals, such as contract deals basically, or a testing and clinical trial deals kind of deals. So the amount will not be disclosed on those deals. So definitely this number is on the north side of what it is written here. Now, another very important factor is cell and gene therapies are actually targeting rare diseases. Obviously, common diseases are also there, but rare diseases are targets basically, where companies are exploring where there is no other option, then cell and gene therapies are being explored there. So 33 bees, which are 15% of the total deal, total number of bees. This is a huge number basically. Now, out of 204, 104 are oncology disease, so which obviously says that oncology is the biggest space basically. Right. Now, moving forward, we'll talk about the concentration. US obviously always tops the chart basically, but I feel the front runner in this region-wise distribution, I feel that Japan is the biggest outlier, I would say. The reason is, one would be thinking that China would have the highest number of deals or something like that, but China lags here, despite of the lot of R&D being happening. But Japan being this very small country in compared to Europe as a Europe as a continent, China obviously being specifically being a country, it is one of the biggest one. US being the a country and with obviously a lot of funds and capital. Compared to that, Japan, in terms of size, in terms of market share and everything, Japan is a very small country, but the total deal value, which is coming out to be $4.9 billion, approximately $5 billion, it's a huge sum. So that means a lot of Japanese companies are focusing a lot on cell and gene therapy, and they are probably doing an out licensing deals or other kind of deals. Now, in terms of deal counts, obviously, May and I think September. May and September have been the busiest months across the space. Now, coming back to the point where I was talking about the contract services. Cell and gene therapy is not just earning money for the pharma companies who are developing cell and gene therapy, or when we talk about these, they're also generating a lot of funds for CDMO companies, for CROs who are actually the service providers, which you can see that there are 105 Ds. So this is so this also indicates that if you're directly not investing in a cell and gene therapy company, but you are investing in a service company, and which supports cell and gene industry, then your investment is going to go bigger for sure, right? So this is there are a lot of clear indications here. Moving on. Now, we're going to talk about ecosystem company journey and the overall outlook of the cell and gene therapy. So, you know, we did, and previously you might have seen that Swati has covered a lot of companies. You've seen history. So let me tell you first some anecdotes about Kite Pharma. So yeah, there was, I'll not go into the detail of that, but there was a slight delay for, because of some internal purposes, internal problems. Otherwise, a lot of companies or a lot of people believe that Kite Pharma would have been the first company to get into the CAR-T, and then, gotten Kymriah approved. Before Kymriah, Yescarta would have been approved. I mean, that's what people say. Me being the part of Kymriah team while with Novartis, I've heard these stories, and obviously, Kite was one of the companies we were looking out for basically while I was doing that. The company was founded in 2009. Before I talk about other things, I wanted to say that for last 4 or 5 Insights Corner, we created a template where we spoke about the company, its financials, and a couple of other things, milestones and everything. But this time I thought that this is a company worth going deep dive in terms of what their milestones have been, and that's what we have attempted to do here. So the company, the company Kite Pharma was founded in 2009 in California by Ari. And he's a very smart, learned man. I had the opportunity in past to meet Ari, I think somewhere around in 2014 at one of the medical conferences in the US. And he was there. He's amazing person to talk to. I spoke to him at a great length, and we spoke about different things, obviously related to parties. Amazing person. So now coming back to this, so company has done a lot of milestones. So I'll just touch base on the few ones basically. So in 2014, company, results were presented, phase 1/2 results, and that's where I met Ari also at ASCO, right? But apart from that, ODD was granted for DLBCL. Moving on from there, then they entered into a licensing agreement with Amgen in 15. They initiated Zuma-1 trial. Then in couple of years, there was a halt in the trial also. But then in 18-19, Yescarta received EU approval first in DLBCL and PMBCL, right? And then that's the same year they have submitted BLA for MCL. The same time period basically, where they have submitted MCL, right? Then 17, they entered into agreement with Daiichi for the marketing of Kite KTEC-19, which is now approved or known as Yescarta, right? And then they obviously every year they were presenting a lot of data. Then the company got acquired. The acquisition got completed in 2017. Those are acquisition, I think, started in early 2016, but it got completed in 2017. Actually, I got to know about this early on while I was doing some primaries, basically. In 2016, but yes, it got completed and closed in 2017, and after that, since then, that Kite stands with its own name. It has become a wholly owned subsidiary, and Gilead has not changed the name basically of Kite Pharma because it still carries some sort of ethos and a prestige with its name. Same year, 17, they got US approval also, right, in DLBCL, PMBCL, TFL, and yeah. but it was not a first approval. It is written, but yeah, it was not a first approval. First approval was definitely Kimbria. As I told you, see, they opened a commercial scale CAR-T facility in California only. So as I told you, and yeah, then in 2020, they launched another product, Tecartus, for MCL, right? And they also got commercializing, conditional approval in Europe also. And since then, yes, it has remained, Kite has remained the wholly owned subsidiary. They are developing Yescarta and Tecartus, right? And then presently ongoing in terms of ongoing Anito, which is about to get approval. It's a very late line multiple myeloma drug. Then we have Kite 364, which is Kite 364, 753, and 197. These all three are phase one. These all three are being explored in DLBCL. Right, and yeah, but they are in the later lines, basically different lines, I believe. Now moving on, after the evolution of company, now let's talk about an evolution of a drug, basically. So Sitacabtagene basically is Johnson Johnson's product. It is a BCMA directed CAR-T basically. So slightly different CAR-T than CD19, which were earlier we have discussed earlier basically. Okay, so the drug first got approved in 2022 in the fourth line plus in the multiple myeloma space. But the real milestone from my perspective was 2024 when it got approved in the first line and above, basically in the Europe and then later on in the US as well in 24. The real reason why I say it is because fourth line, these patients are very rare patients, a very less patient pool, and obviously, but earlier line means bigger market space, more money, obviously, but bigger size, bigger market to cater to, and it adds also the trust in the results of the product, basically. So obviously, this is a Johnson Johnson product, right? And I think if I'm not wrong, it was initially developed by Legend Biotech, which is a Chinese company, right? And now in terms of efficacy, the efficacy has been, in 2019, when the results were presented at ASH, in 29 patients, there was a 100%, I think, the 100% ORR and at a 6 months for median follow-up, basically. And now in terms of when going towards the long-term follow-up, which is now 61 beyond 60 months, basically, with 5 years, basically. So 5 years data, 97 patient ASCO 2025. The ORR was not reported, but median OS was 5 years, basically. So the patients who have, 60% of the patients who have started on the study now, they have 5 years. The life expectancy has increased in some one words, basically, for 5 years, more than 5 years actually. And this is median OS. So for some, it would have been more also, right? So the long-term benefits are definitely higher. And if we talk about sales, so that these sales also kind of resonates with what I was just saying about the approval. So see, 2024, they got approval, and 24 sales was, before approval, the sale was 963. But after that, the sales kind of got doubled, 96% hike in the sales. So this is a very intelligent numbers, very smart numbers, basically. And then obviously it kind of resonates or it backs my theory also. Now moving on, These are patient support resources. The reason why we thought of covering patient support resources is because CAR-Ts, one of the barriers, biggest barrier in adopting CAR-Ts is the expensiveness, basically. And hence there are multiple programs such as, Myca Recti, Care Partners, Sequence, basically. And then these are either copay programs or wallet programs, partial pay, installment programs, reimbursement models, and then so on and so forth. These are all programs which kind of address that biggest elephant in the room, which is the money, basically, we are talking about, right? And moving forward, so moving from the products now to the people who make these products or promote these products. So we thought that because KOLs are the voice of these products, and so we thought about developing a KOL profile. Obviously, this is a single profile, but yeah, the idea is to tell you that KOL are the biggest part of this whole process, marketing process or sales process. Commercialization process, basically. And so we are talking about Dr. Jay Park, basically, who is part of MSKCC. And in terms of his education, he has done his MD from Johns Hopkins, basically. And the reason why we chose Jay Park is one very important factor is MSKCC, because MSKCC is one of the pioneer organizations, not just in CAR-Ts but overall in the oncology space, basically. So and that's that's when we thought that let's cover MSKCC, but then and then at MSKCC, Jay Park was one of the known names, and then we thought of covering his profile. Now coming about talking about his profile. In terms of memberships, his memberships is distributed industry relationship and has the highest biggest chunk. In terms of record, I think he has done a lot of interviews, I believe. Some of the conditions he treats as ALL, AML, basically heme malignancies, basically. Now in terms of publications, if you see, there is a drastic growth in the in JPAC's number of publications, basically, starting in 2010 when his first publication was done, right? And from then to 2025, where he published 32 papers, basically, which includes all the literature reviews, results, and so on and so forth. And even in 2026, in just 3 months, I believe, in 4 months, basically, he has published 10 papers. Now, in terms of abstracts, these abstracts are basically presentations Dr. Park has done. And then obviously 2025 says 35 presentation across the year, which is 3 on average, which is a huge number, basically. Now, in terms of industrial relationship, he is associated with all the big names, or all the names which are, the makers and the breakers of the cell therapy. Call it Amgen, Adaptive, Allogene, Autolus, and I know Iovance, who has gotten the first TIL got approved. Another thing, I'll also tell you about this. After the acquisition of Kite, now ARI has pioneered 2 companies, actually. One was Kite and one is Allogene. He is a co-founder in Allogene as well. So just an interesting fact about him. Now, beyond KOL, then we have patient advocacy group who talks about cell and gene therapy. So International Society for Cell and Gene Therapy, as the name suggests, they are the voices for cell and gene therapy. On LinkedIn, on social media, if we talk about LinkedIn, 18,000 plus of followers. Followed by Twitter, 4.7 thousands. In the 2026 itself, they have done 6 events, and then 5 publications have been done. And I think this number 5 publication is overall, I believe. In terms of focus or engagement weightage, we see that research and science, basically research and development. So their focus is a lot. A major chunk has gone to the research and development. In terms of events they have done. The feature event of 2026. There were 650 plus abstracts which were presented, and from the 60 countries, basically, and 250 speakers. It was a 4-day conference. So they organized their conference in 2027. The conference is going to be in the US somewhere, and 2028 in Canada. Right. And then in terms of partner organization, you can see there are a lot of names, but some of the ones which are once again very well known planners in the space is Catapult, and then we have ASTCT, and obviously everyone knows about Alliance of Regenerative Medicine, which is a big name. In terms of leadership, they have big names. Queenie Jiang and Miguel, both industrials, came from industry. Moving on now, so this is our last slide. We'll talk about what are the what holds what the future holds for cell therapy. So first thing is CAR T cell expansion. So Swati has already discussed about this. We are going towards allogenic. So obviously expansion. We 2008 or something, first generation was there, but now we are at the approved. Some of the approved are second generation. Then some of the late stage are third generation. It's not about the stage; it's about the new innovation. Then we have fourth generation, which is probably in the early stage of phase 1, phase 2 at the moment, and generation 5, preclinical early phase 1s basically. And if I talk about, there is a generation 6 also, which is being in the. So there is lot of expansion going on. There is armament happening in CAR Ts and then a couple of other things. Now, in terms of second future direction, which they're talking about, is the shift to allogenic or off the shelf. At the moment, these are autologous, which means that cells are derived from the patient, chimerization happened, and they're then fitted or given back inside the body, basically. So these are not off the shelf. Patient has to wait for the treatment for some time. Obviously depend on the on the process and everything, logistics and process, and obviously it is a logistical or a supply chain nightmare basically. So a lot of research is going on in terms of allogenic CAR Ts basically. These will be off the shelf. So quick turnaround and everything. Now AI integration, and we all know about AI being incorporated and everything. So AI is definitely being explored in the CAR T space also. Whether you talk about the discovery, target identification, and then trial designing, patient recruitment, and so on and so forth. Now, in terms of expanding the another fourth area is disease and indications and combination therapies. So, in past we were talking about we spoke about diseases, and you must have seen that a lot of approvals have happened only in the hematological spaces, even within the oncology. But there are now drugs which are CAR Ts which are being developed in the solid tumors. But beyond oncology, there is a lot of research going on. As I was just saying that I was at GCOM last month in Lisbon, and then Capillita Bio, BMS, Novartis, a lot of talk about CAR T cells. These were the talk of the towns and everyone talking about them. In immunology, like for example, IAMs, which is idiopathic, immune idiopathic myositis, dermatomyositis basically, and a couple of other spaces. We have just seen an example of DMD cardiomyopathy. So within the cardiomyopathy space, basically also, CAR-Ts are being explored. Then we have sustainable and cost-effective manufacturing. I just spoke about it. There are a lot of companies who are offering services in terms of manufacturing. They have a lot of compliances. Bigger players are also jumping in the space in terms of contract manufacturing for CAR-Ts. The reason behind it is manufacturing. Setting up manufacturing facility takes a lot of money. Company like Kite, it took them a lot of time, funding from Gilead, and then they were able to set up their manufacturing facility. So definitely makes sense to have contract manufacturing where companies can tell you a know-how and then you can make money and similar equipment, similar models, a slight change in the protocol, and then you can develop molecules for multiple companies basically and understand the know-how by understanding the know-how. So contract manufacturing or contract services, then equipment like bioreactors and all, they are also the future direction basically. Now moving ahead, I think this was the last slide. That was the last slide. And now a little bit about us. We are a global consulting evidence-based solution providers, and if you need support for your CAR cell and gene therapy in terms of competitive tracking or conference coverages or primary market research to establish a go-to-market strategy, feel free to reach us. You can download this presentation from our website. You can reach out to me and Rakesh. If you don't want the presentation from the website, but you want to directly reach out to us, feel free to reach us, and we'll be happy to share the presentation. And if needed, set up a conversation. So thank you so much. I hope this added value to you guys, and thank you. Bye bye.